Welcome to 3DP Wiki, a 3D printing resource. In this video we're going to discuss what 3D printing is, the materials that 3D printers use, and how 3D printing stacks up to traditional manufacturing. During the video you will see keywords popping up in the corner. These are terms that you could type into our Wiki's search. Let's begin. To understand the concept of 3D printing, let's first consider 2D printing. As you can see, I printed the words 3DP Wiki on this piece of paper. Imagine if I were to run this through my printer over and over, printing these exact letters on top of each other until you could physically pull a letter off of the page. Well, we know that can't actually happen with ink, but what if it could happen with something else? With 3D printing, we can now take a three-dimensional design. The software for the machine will slice that design into tiny layers, and the machine will then begin printing each layer right on top of the other. One important concept to understand is support. As a 3D printer builds something one layer at a time, it will often need some form of support to hold everything in place. The support is removed afterward, leaving you with the product itself. A well-designed 3D printer utilizing some form of support can create just about any kind of shape within the limitations of its build chamber. In fact, many 3D printers can create shapes that you otherwise could not make using traditional methods. Let's talk about materials. Most 3D printers work with one of three types of materials. They either work with a filament, which is melted and extruded to form the shape of the part, a liquid resin which is cured by UV light, or a powder that is infused with binder or sintered. We'll have an entire video on materials, but for now it's important to note that your material options are limited to the technology of the 3D printer, of which there are many, each of which work in different ways and each of which have their own advantages and disadvantages. As an example, filament-based processes produce extremely strong parts out of thermoplastic materials like ABS plastic, such as this part right here. Meanwhile, UV-cured processes, such as polyjet, can push the liquid material through thousands of tiny little nozzles, just like your 2D printer does with ink, resulting in a product with absolutely amazing detail. It's important to understand you cannot achieve this type of resolution using a filament process. Meanwhile, you cannot achieve this type of strength using a UV-cured process. You cannot pour a liquid UV-cured material into the machine that made this part, and you cannot extrude a filament material through the machine that made this part. So again, there are many different materials, each of which requires a different technology, of which there are many, each of which will have their own advantages and disadvantages. Finally, let's talk about speed. If producing something one layer at a time sounds like it would take a long time to do, you're absolutely right. 3D printing is both the fastest and slowest way to produce something. What do I mean by that? Producing just one part on a 3D printer could easily require many hours of machine time. Consequently, it's generally not a very smart way to go about manufacturing most things. As an example, if it takes half a day to print something and you expect to sell 100,000 of those somethings, you probably don't have 136 years to wait for your machine to print them. But what if you don't need 100,000 units? What if you only need one? Why spend a few weeks and invest thousands of dollars into a mold when a 3D printer could take you from having nothing more than an idea on your computer to having the actual part in your hands that very same day? Hopefully you now have a good understanding of the premise behind 3D printing, and we hope you find this wiki useful. Thank you.